we realize how much we rely on migrant workers, and we're also uncertain for the future. So I wanted to talk a little bit about who owns the food, who controls the food. So corporate concentration is occurring through the entire industrial food chain. So from seeds to agrochemicals, to fertilizers, to livestock genetics, to animal pharmaceuticals, farm machinery, grocery retailing, and process and fast food sales. It's in the hands of very few companies, and certainly not in the hands of consumers. And you probably heard about the instances of plant closures during the pandemic. So there was 8 in Canada, and the top 2, one in High River, Alberta, and one in Brooks, make up 70% of Canada's beef processing. So not only does that lead to food shortages, it affects the farmers because they don't have anywhere to take their cattle, but it also affects the workers because many of those workers have been affected by COVID-19 and have are ill or have died.
Mm.
So just to look at the landscape of who owns seeds and agricultural chemicals, there were 6 major companies that owned controlled most of the seeds and agricultural chemicals. And you've probably heard of most of them. So BASF, Bayer, Dow Chemical, DuPont, Monsanto, and Syngenta. And further to that, that too is a concentration of smaller companies. And so recently, after 2015, there was the 3 big mergers of these companies. So Bayer merged with Monsanto. And of course, you probably know about Monsanto. They have come under, there's been a lot of media attention about Monsanto. So their name has basically been dropped, and they're part of Bayer now. So Dow Chemical merged with DuPont, and then they actually split into 3 companies, and one of the main ones is Corteva. Chem China acquired Syngenta. So along with BASF, they control more than 60% of the global seed sales.
Wow.
Now, this is obviously a little bit hard to read, but I just wanted to point out the interconnections between these 6 firms. And so the ones in blue are the seed companies, the ones in red are the chemical companies, and then the ones in green are sort of subsidiary companies that do different things. And then there's the lines in between are full ownership or part ownership. So you can really see the concentration of control over seeds from this diagram. And the other thing that it's not just seeds and the chemicals that go with the seeds, because a lot of seeds are produced and they work hand in hand with the chemicals that are used for the fertilizers and the pesticides and the fungicides. So the seeds and the chemical companies go hand in hand, but it's much deeper than that. So it's not only the seeds, but it's the feed inputs, the feed mill, the livestock producers, the slaughterhouses, further processing, and the retailers. So this is vertical integration. So a lot of companies own many aspects of the food system. And then another one would be the horizontal integration. So it would be supermarkets that own food retailers. And actually my friend was talking about that because it's Galen Weston that owns Superstore, but also the Shoppers Drug Marts. So now you've got Shoppers Drug Marts have food in them, and they're in all over every neighborhood. So that is like, again, the concentration of food retailing in the hands of less and less companies and people. So the consequences of the concentration of power there's limited competition. So there's limited opportunities for other firms to be part of the food system, because there's very few companies that own the, like we were saying, the vertical integration and the horizontal integration. And that leads to less innovation, because basically you want to just focus on the things that make money, as opposed to maybe focusing on changing things up or being more creative in what you're doing, and just having less brains in the room that are working on these issues. And then there's less transparency as well. So uncovering who owns what is also challenged by the opaque and constantly shifting corporate parentage of many brands and subsidiaries. So that is that the actual ownership, it's really hard to know where things come from, because I mean, if you look back at that seed map, there's all those companies. It's really hard to track where food is coming from. And also there is less transparency by companies to actually reveal where their food comes from. And I think, Lisa, there was one slide before this one. And so it's fewer and fewer people have the power to make important decisions. So what they produce, how they produce it, and who has access to it. So when fewer companies have control of seeds and chemicals and retailing and all of those things, there is just less choices and less people deciding what we are allowed to consume. And then also that concentration and monopoly of the food system allows people to raise prices without losing customers. And so there's a lot of consequences of the concentration of power. So extremely low worker wages and poor treatment of farmers, exploiting suppliers. An example of that would be if you're a big company and you want a supplier to do things a certain way, then they have no choice but to do that. So I've heard of that in the instances of maybe sizes of things. Maybe they would prefer to make something smaller or larger, but then the company makes them do it in the way that the company wants, and that gives less latitude for the supplier to do what they want to do. Of course, there's lots of negative health consequences. There's things like the amount of pesticides and chemicals in our food, the effect on the workers who have to apply those chemicals. And then, of course, again, negative environmental impacts. So it not only does it affect the workers, but it also affects the environment. And because there's so much power in the food system, companies are able to take advantage of taxpayer subsidies and influencing government policies. There's a lot of pollution, including the production of climate changing greenhouse gas production from CAFOs, so the concentrated animal feeding operation. And, you know, farmers are upset because basically one of the things that's being said is that it's cattle and meat production that's like causing greenhouse gases and causing climate change. And that's true and also isn't true. The issue isn't really the cattle themselves. The issue is the concentrated animal feeding operations. So where you get many millions of animals in one spot, there's issues with that. The health of the animals. There is the lagoon, the sewage lagoons, which are become enormous, and they that is part of the problem. It's not the cattle or the animals themselves, but it's the way they're produced. And the way they're produced is simply for profit. There's still a way to produce enough meat to feed everybody, but because you can maximize your profits by putting them in smaller settings, and then also having your workers in smaller settings to increase production, that is the real impetus behind it, is profit, not actually because you wouldn't be able to get enough food production if you didn't do it that way. And we saw that during the pandemic, where the workers in the slaughterhouses were really, really close together. And there's already a lot of occupational health and safety worker issues with these concentrated slaughterhouses, because the speed at which they have to work it's so fast that people often get injured. So again, it is just about profit. It's not about worker health. It's not about consumer health. It's about how can you produce as much as you can, even the way that cattle are fattened and processed. It's about profit. It's not about food quality or food safety. And then also, of course, we've seen the decline of rural communities. It's really hard to compete with large companies that own land. And so we've all seen our rural communities decline, and we need, like more than ever, we need rural communities now. And so a good thing to do is a value chain analysis, which I mean is like a critique of the food system, which we are all a part of, and it affects us greatly. So you want to follow a single product from its design and production to its consumption to understand how the entire system works. So you want to analyze the differences in power and the relationship between firms and individuals throughout the chain, and consider the impacts on people, which is the labor and the consumers, as well as the environment. And so another issue is how much waste there is in the food system. So 58% of food produced in Canada is lost or wasted. And if you extrapolate that to the rest of the world, we are wasting a great deal of our food. It's really a shame that that's happening. And so one of the things that happened is there's ugly vegetables. So it's vegetables that aren't like straight, or they have blemishes on them, or whatever is happening. So there was a movement in France to appreciate ugly vegetables, because ugly vegetables don't even make it to the store. So that is wasted. Not to mention just food that is wasted in transportation, in harvesting, in in all the other aspects of the food chain. So food waste is a huge problem, and if that would be a place where we could intervene quite easily to prevent waste. And then, of course, you have to examine all the other inputs. So water, transportations, forests and deforestation for packaging. And then just in terms of the value chain analysis, like read labels, like where does your food come from? And also get to know your farmer. So there's many other inputs into the food system besides just seeds or chemicals. There's agricultural fuel and synthetic fertilizer and pesticides. There is transportation, refrigeration, food processing and manufacturing, and then of course packaging, which is basically there's the cardboard packaging, and then of course there's all the plastic, which basically is made out of oil. So I'm just noticing that there's some issue with the sound. So is there anything I can do? Like, can everybody hear me? I'm just not sure what to do
I
here.
can hear you.
Okay.
And I don't see any wave up that they can't hear you.
Okay, okay. Johnny seemed to be having an issue. I just wanted to make sure because it's hard for me to know, so.
Okay. Myrta, can you check and see the situation with that, please?
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Sorry about that. Okay, so for every calorie of food that is produced, 10 to 15 calories of fossil fuel energy are put into the system to grow that food. So our food is very oil intensive. Another thing that's embedded in our food is water. So think about growing the grain to feed the animals and then also supporting the animals, and then even just how much water is in a transport truck or a farm machinery, or when you think about all the water that is embedded in everything that we do, then you can see how much water, it's almost invisible to us, but it's a lot of water usage, and it never goes back into the water cycle. So this is just a list of how much water is per pound in some animal proteins and then some plant-based proteins. So you can see that water usage is very, agriculture is very water intensive as well. And then, of course, the land. So people and farmers are forced off the land for industrial production, for settlement. So think about Indigenous people in the Americas and right now occurring in the Amazon rainforest, where it is being cut down at unprecedented rates for ranchers, for forestry, and Indigenous people are being displaced in the Amazon, the planet's lungs. And then, of course, one of the main issues is foreign investment. So this has resulted in land grabbing. So land grabbing is it's a really important thing that's happening right now. So it's the large scale acquisition of land and other resources. So it began in earnest after 2008, and it can be done by individuals, groups, companies, governments, and it can be domestic or foreign. And the land can be leased or owned, and it can be legal or illegal, and it can be used for monoculture production, speculation, commodification, resource extraction, or control of water, ports, roads, etc. And I just noticed that Renee said that it can be used for tourism as well. And this is a really important aspect of like 21st century globalization. There is export processing zones, and they are popping up all over the world. So they basically they're really autonomous in the sense that they don't fall under the laws of anything like the WTO, the World Trade Organization, or of the country's laws, or of the Food and Agriculture Organization. Like they're export processing zones, and that's where all kinds of things happen. So it could be food production, it could be manufacturing, clothing, like all different kinds of things. And they really, like, they're pretty autonomous in the sense that they're not really monitored for their environmental impact or their labor impacts or different things. So land grabbing, I mean, like I said, it's about control over food. I mean, there's lots of places where they don't have enough land to grow their own food to feed their population. So the land grabbing happens so they have access to land so they can produce food for their population. but at the expense of the people that live there and have owned the land traditionally. So land grabbing is a huge, huge problem. And it's not only the land that they get access to water rights and infrastructure and all kinds of different things. And it's pretty deregulated. So it can cause a huge impact on, like, a lot of the, like, you know, the profits that come from these export zones don't actually get transferred back into foreign investment into the country where this is happening. So countries don't, some people in the country might benefit from it, but it's not actually benefiting the people that live in that place. So one of the major aspects of the food system is labor. So our food is produced by migrant workers, workers who are undocumented or who lack rights, both here in Canada and around the world. So in Canada, that means that workers do not have access to citizenship or health benefits. They are often poorly paid and work in harsh or dangerous conditions. They are often afraid to report abuses for fear of deportation. And they are now recognized as essential frontline workers. So you may have heard just on the news that Mexico is not allowing migrant workers to come into Canada because 2 workers died recently. So this is what I meant at the beginning when I was talking about the uncertainty. We don't know what is going to happen with farm workers. Because they come from far away, we don't know. Under COVID-19, we're not sure, like, there's a lot of uncertainty in the food system right now. And so people wonder, like, why do people even come here? Why are there migrants? Like, you know, they come here because they're suffering under war, poverty, persecution, extraction, unemployment, social oppression, and environmental collapse. So there are migrants, they are forced to leave their homes and their families to come to a hostile country to do work and produce essential services and goods for us. So it's like, it's not just the environmental impacts of food or the labor impacts of food. There is a lot of different impacts of the food system as it is run currently. So there's oppression, racism, and climate catastrophe. So as you know, Indigenous people were forcibly removed from their land and put on reservations, with their livelihoods, cultures, and food systems destroyed by settlers. People of African descent came to the Americas in 1619. They built much of the prosperity we see and enjoy today. They have not benefited from their labor and make up a small percentage of owners. So it is systemic racism that colonization is based on and continues to this day. And we would be remiss not to consider racism during this time and how important the history of people of color have been to the world, and the impacts that racism is still having on people around the world. Migrant workers continue to be exploited across the world, resulting in serious human rights violations. Women are impacted negatively. Women do the majority of the world's work and have very little income, property, land, or decision-making power, all the while being subjected to physical, sexual, emotional, and financial violence. And the planet is being destroyed by greed, not for prosperity for all, to the detriment of people and the ecosystems upon which we all depend. So now that we've talked a lot about all of the problems with the food system, it's heartening to know that there are many movements and groups and people and consumers who really care about our food system. One of the main and most inspiring groups that I know about is La Via Campesina. So it's a peasant rights organization, and they first coined the term food sovereignty, which is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and the ability of them to define their own food and agricultural systems. It puts people who produce, distribute, and consume food at the heart of food systems and policies rather than the demands of markets and corporations. It defends the interests and inclusion of the next generation. It offers a strategy to resist and dismantle the current corporate trade and food regime. It prioritizes local and national economies and markets. It empowers local producers to direct food, farming, pastoral, and fisheries systems. It empowers peasant and family farmer-driven agriculture, artisanal fishing, and pastoralist-led grazing. It ensures that food production, distribution, and consumption are based on environmental, social, and economic sustainability. It promotes transparent trade that guarantees just income to all peoples and the rights of consumers to control their food and nutrition. It ensures that the rights to use and manage the lands, territories, waters, seeds, livestock, and biodiversity are in the hands of those who produce food. And food sovereignty implies new social relations free of oppression and inequality between men and women, peoples, racial groups, social classes, and generations. I encourage you to learn more. There's so many wonderful authors. I didn't even come close to listing as many authors and documentaries that are available. I just wanted to point out Vandana Shiva is, she's one of my heroes, one of the greatest intellectuals alive, and she has worked for seed freedom and looking at corporate control of food, and she will amaze you. So even if you look her up on YouTube or watch a video or read some, she has many books that she's written. She's just amazing. And then of course, I'm sure you've heard of some of these other authors that are listed. And of course, there's so many documentaries as well that really have, shed light on the food system and uncover the injustices and the power and control in the food system. And so that's all I have for my presentation. And I know there was a lot there, but I really welcome anybody to comment or question anything that you've heard today. I would welcome that.
So the floor is now open for your questions, comments. No need to be shy.
I'm not sure what happened in the chat box, if anybody has any questions that are in there.
Oof. Okay.
Does anybody need captioning at all? Just asking before we continue so I can maybe do that. No? Okay.
Okay.
Margaret's asking, where are you today?
Where am I?
Yeah.
I am working from home.
Oh, like Regina.
Yes, I'm in Regina. We're the Western hub, so there's a few of us from Regina. I'm not sure where other people are from either. I guess we're from across the country here.
Do you work with any people in Saskatoon?
Well, there is a lot going on in Saskatoon with regards to food security. I find that in Saskatoon, there's actually more organizations that are working on food issues. There's more like local producers, and I, of course, love visiting the farmers market up there. There seems to be a lot more. There's they have the food, I can't remember what it's called right now, but well, they have the University of Saskatchewan, of course. So there's a lot of food, like fruit breeding and different kinds of plant breeding and stuff like that that's happening. So for food for the prairies, they have food, I just forget what it's called right now, but it's the where you can go to value add food, so you can make products to for sale. So they help you with like obviously the production of, say you have a recipe that you want, they may help you with the production. They help you with the marketing and that kind of thing. So there's a lot more sort of small businesses that are coming out of Saskatoon. And there's a real awareness, like I was saying, there is a lot of hope in the food system. There's a lot of awareness of where your food comes from, and people are concerned about, like they want to support local economies, especially now, like after, like during the pandemic. I just feel like there's a lot of hope for the food system to become more sustainable and fairer. And
then Margaret asks, are you working with Indigenous women across the country? I know Priscilla and her work. After, what about the demise of the grasslands regarding settler break-off lands?
yes, so Indigenous food sovereignty is basically, that's what La Via Campesina is. They work for Indigenous food sovereignty, and that's Indigenous people across the world. And Priscilla is a friend, and she is wonderful. The work that she's doing is so important. And part of colonization was to dismantle, I mean, I guess everywhere in the world, but as well as in Canada, is to dismantle food systems. So for example, the killing of the buffalo, you know, and the force, like in the starvation of Indigenous people, as in the book, the clearing of the plains. There are instances and evidence of like controlling, if you control food, you control people. So it's a really effective way to control a population. And so, you know, the killing of the buffalo, and even just nowadays, it's like rights to fishing and rights to land and trapping and all those things. They are endangered, and that is an intentional tactic to, like, because if you control people's food systems, you control people. So that's really important. And then as far as the grasslands, like the grasslands is really, really interesting. Like there is a lot of oil and coal bed methane under the grasslands in Saskatchewan. And so it was communally owned, or owned, like not owned, but it was a public good, like a commons, that has been in existence for a long time under the PFRA, the Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Association, like a federal government organization. And so they basically made it so that it's not a commons anymore, and they're trying to sell it off. And there's a lot of resources. Like if you ever go to the Great Sandhills up there, which is also because it's kind of in that same corridor, like the Sandhills are amazing. But there's oil, there's a lot of oil under there. And there's dinosaurs. So of course, like in East End, there's dinosaurs and stuff. So there's a lot of fossil fuels in that area. So the grasslands is really, really interesting. And also it's native prairie. Like we need Indigenous people, Indigenous species, Indigenous knowledge more than ever at this time.
So
the comment, go ahead, Renee.
okay, I was just gonna kind of catch up on the commentary here, Margaret, and that I had just kind of commented, we also need to be aware that it's Canadian companies doing a lot of the extraction and mining overseas, and then we displace people to our own hostile lands. And I think we as Canadians have a lot of power to like impact the world if we take that seriously. And then Margaret writes, yes, the demise of the Quechua and the Hud Bay mining is frightening. These people are impacted by COVID and the neglect of this company. I'm from the south near the national park and know about this. There's an influx of people buying up lands and plowing up, and this is a huge concern for food. Yeah.
Yeah, Canadian mining companies have a lot to answer for. And further, because our mining, like the regime allows, like the majority of the world's mining companies are registered in Canada because of the way our legislation is. So, and further, Canada is famous, we're experts at mining in war zones. So Canada has a lot to answer to. There are a lot of problems with Canadian mining companies. And there are a lot of refugees from Canadian mining companies. And there are instances of Canadian mining companies being in court in Canada for abuse of power in countries overseas. So yes, Canadian mining companies need to be watched. They need to be criticized, and they need to be they're working on, I think actually there is a like a ombudsman now, but it's like, what are they actually doing? Do they have any teeth? Like, can we monitor them for their human rights abuses and environmental abuses? So yes, learning more about Canadian mining companies is very, very important. They're very powerful, and it's like a real blight on Canadian values and the idea of Canada in the world and being global citizens and that sort of thing. Because if you look at our mining sector, it is not, it is the opposite of that.
Hi, Denise. Thank you very much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I really liked that you gave us some of the resources to look back on, like the I presume it's a book by Philip Howard. Was that a book?
Yeah. He has
okay.
a website, and he's got a lot of different things in it. And the ETC group, I really cannot. I love them so much. They're a wonderful Canadian organization, and there's so much more to talk about. But ETC group as well. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and no, it's really good that's a Canadian organization, because I've read a few books, but they're kind of more on the American, the US statistics and stuff. So it's nice to know that's a Canadian one. And just I wanted to ask, what do you think are a couple of action items that we as individuals can do, no matter like I'm in Edmonton, wherever we are in our communities? What are some action items that we could take away and actually do so that we can start in making some impacts here?
Yeah, one of the things is seed freedom. Seeds are important. So we have Prairie Garden Seeds. So they're a seed producer in Saskatchewan, and they're open pollinated seeds. That is the thing about seeds, is that, first of all, I think there's about 5% of the seeds left in the world. We used to have, talk about, you go into the supermarket, you think there's diversity, there isn't. Hardly any of the seeds exist. Although they do exist, there is seed banks. So there is seed banks, there's some that have a bunch of seeds for sure, but readily available. If you go to the store and you see all those seeds, it's who owns the seeds? And further to that, a lot of the seeds are they're hybrid seeds. You can't necessarily save the seeds from them. You can't grow them again afterwards. There's a lot of different things with hybrid seeds that again is then that you control the seeds and control the food. So one of the main things would be if you have a seed library, if you know any seed producers, if you become a seed saver yourself, and the seed saving movement is really taking off right now. Seeds are so important. So that would be one main thing. And also just paying more for food, buying organic, supporting your farmers, knowing where your food comes from, critically analyzing the food that you eat. It isn't more expensive. It is. And not everybody can afford it. Absolutely not. I get that. But, just trying to, where you can, local, organic, fair trade. It's a continuum. You're not going to be able to do everything all the time. It's, you know, but, or maybe you just eat seasonally, or you eat less. Like I started eating less peppers because I can't afford them. Like they're too expensive. So I just don't eat them anymore. Like, you know, or it's a real treat when I do. So things like that. So like really being aware of the food that you eat, and then who owns it. Like I said, like you saw that diagram, it's like, you know, and it's hard to know, but educating yourself. And the main other thing that's important is talking to others. Social change really happens when you talk to others. People have no idea, especially kids. They think their food comes from a supermarket. It's like, no, eggs come from a chicken. Like, and it's a, like, you know, and things like that, like go to a farm, like, you know, do that kind of, support your farmer, go to a farm. You know, be really, really aware of where your food comes from. We need to support local more than ever, because this pandemic is wreaking havoc on the food system, and we are going to see some really negative impacts from that. So things like that, but learning, and it's super interesting, although it may make you not want to eat some food though, because you'll be like, oh, I'm never eating that again. Once you find out like how it's made and stuff. So that could be a problem. There might be some sadness. So be prepared, but there's also solutions. So you can also have hope.
Thank you very much. Those were great points. Thank you.
There's a comment in the chat saying that I'm from the south near the national park and know about this. There's an influx of people buying up the lands and plowing up. This is a huge concern for food, and local food and small farms are being impacted. Monsanto is impacting the old and farmers, the farmers. How you found guilty, it is especially concerning. My name is yeah, go right ahead, Margaret, please.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake with the typing autocorrect. I just want to say that there's a lot of local issues in the South because more of the land, the grasslands are being plowed up. There's a lot of cooperatives, including Hutterites, buying a lot of the land, and people from other places. And also Monsanto has such an impact. These companies that are genetically modifying food have such an impact on farming practices today that the land is being impacted, all the biodiversity on the land, the animals, the birds, the plants, the insects are all being impacted by this. And the waters, of course. I mean, the South Saskatchewan is in real trouble. But there's what can be done. Like, we just need to do a better job. We've got my own family, they're large farm, like small farm, large farmers, but they are using pesticides and all of these chemicals and crap. And it's really upsetting and disturbing because the organic farmers, of which there are many in Saskatchewan, are getting, like, they're kind of getting pushed down by all the genetic modification of these seeds and all of the spraying and the pesticides that go on, the chemicals, and the huge amounts of funding that are coming out of these chemical companies that are influencing children in schools and all of the rest of it. It's all connected. So I'm very concerned that we are not doing what we need to do. We can save seeds and we can, you know, band together, but we've got to do some hard work in order to stop some of what is going on here. And, you know, like when we know what's happened to the American farmers through the Monsanto fights that they've had, and what can we do? How is it that we are going to actually make a change? And, you know, it's like everything. Small farmers are trying not to, through the land processes, get eaten up by these large corporations. And the governments of Canada, the provincial governments, are moving more and more to American models where they're allowing large corporations in to buy land or these conglomerates. And I have nothing. I mean, I am neighbors with these people. My family has been. But, you know, when you see these large corporations, they're saying they're organic, but they're not. They're using Monsanto seed, Monsanto chemicals, and it's just, I don't know. Like, it's a hard road when you come from a place where you know what should be and what is going on.
Well, you cannot underestimate the desire of corporate agriculture to control it all. That is the goal. That is where they're heading. That is what they're doing. It's happening. That's exactly right. And the land grabbing is a serious issue. And so if you don't have political will, where in some cases, like there was no foreign ownership of land in Canada was not allowed, or it was like a small amount. Well, that changed. Like the wheat board got sold off, and you know, it's a lot of not only corporations but hedge funds. Like it's just about the foreign investment. It's just about the profit. It isn't about the land or the food. In some cases, like I was saying, they do want to be able to grow food for export so that they can feed their people. For sure, that's part of it. But you are right. It is a huge, huge problem. And GMOs, like, and people like GMOs, it's a really controversial topic. But for example, Europe doesn't allow GMOs, but we are guinea pigs. Like we are like a social experiment for GMOs. And they do say, like, one of the arguments that the GMO companies use is yields. We wouldn't be able to feed the world because of the yields on GMOs. It's not true. Yields on organic farms are also high. And GMOs, because they say they can suppress weeds, they can to a certain degree. But now there are super weeds, and they can't control that. Things evolve very quickly. So, and further to that, another argument of the GMOs is that there's no science to back it up, that they're not dangerous. There is no science. We can't prove it. Well, partly it's because, like you said, they're in the classrooms, they're in the universities, they control the information, they control the science, and there is science, there is proof. And I would direct you to Dr. Seralini. He is a French doctor, so it's, I think it's Serelini, Dr. Seralini. He had come to Saskatchewan. He has done work on GMOs. He has evidence of the harm that GMOs cause. And he's an independent scientist. So of course in France, they really protect their farmers. So he's a French scientist. And so that is an example of evidence of harm. And I saw a vet. I went to the National Farmers Union, one of the National Farmers Union events, and there was a vet. And he is like, been a vet for 50 years, works with animals in Saskatchewan. And basically people come to him, they're like, my animals are sick. And he's like, don't feed them GMOs. And they don't feed them GMOs, and the animals get better. And, you know, he has taken a lot of heat too. You cannot underestimate things like, even me talking about this right now, sort of the censorship and the desire for this information to not get out, to suppress it. It is extremely valid. It's a valid point. It is happening. But there are people that are fighting the system, and it is a problem. There are GMOs being dumped, like GMO corn in Latin America, GMOs into Africa, harming the local food system. But if you contaminate the food system, then people rely on your seeds, then you get richer. Like it's real. It's a good plan if you want to get rich. Like that's what happens. And it's true. Bees are dying, pollinators are dying, insects are dying. We're in the 6th mass extinction. You know, we are causing a lot of harm to our environment, and a lot of it has to do with our food system. And it is a problem. And so there are people that are fighting back. And it was funny when I said we're guinea pigs, the Dr. Seralini came to Regina, and also he has a chef friend, and they wrote a book, and the book is called We Are All Guinea Pigs. And I just thought that was really funny and also terrible. But we're part of an experiment that the Europeans won't do it. Like, they refuse to let GMOs. And a lot of even other countries are refusing to take our flax and different things that we produce because of the GMOs. So like, there is a big movement. And like I said, Monsanto, that name, you won't see that name anymore because it has been usurped by another company because of the pressure against them. So advocacy works, and political organizing does work. It worked for Monsanto. I mean, they're still doing whatever they're doing, but they can't walk around all proudly with their names on buildings and all that stuff. So it does work. So, don't feel like it's all lost because Monsanto has taken a hit. There's court cases against them and verdicts and different things. So like, people are on alert now. So it's important. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of legislation that supports them. So part of it is also the legislation. And when politicians, like supporting progressive politicians who want to start new bills or do different things, like, we have to get involved. Like, we have no choice. We have to raise awareness and get involved because it does help for sure.
So Denise, we have a couple more questions in here. One is from Sharon Steinhauer over here in Treaty 6 territory as well. Hi, Sharon. You went through the slides on food sovereignty very fast, and this is an area of learning for me. I know more about who owns, controls, etc. I'm trying to develop more language and clarity about what food sovereignty means. So I know lots about the problems and less about the solutions. Are your participants going to receive your slides? Maybe you want to talk more about that?
Yes, again, La Via Campesina, like, they are an amazing organization, and they worked for decades. And now the United Nations has recognized the rights of peasants and other people that live in rural areas. So there is a ton of advocacy. These are landless people, a lot of people that have been, it's like generations of food producers that have been removed from the land. And so La Via Campesina, and it is like many, many countries across the world. And then there's also the movement of landless people. So it's Movimiento de Trabajadores Sem Tierra. So it's another huge organization of peasants who are working to work towards food sovereignty. And so I really recommend you check out La Via Campesina. Their work is unbelievable. And food sovereignty, I mean, food security means I can get food. Food sovereignty means I get to decide what kind of food I get and produce. So really, we need to move from this language of food security to food sovereignty, because it's up to each person, each group, each country, everyone to decide the food that they want. And it doesn't need to be toxic, processed, chemical food. That is also, there's huge money in that. Again, the profit. So like, we need to be able to control the food that we eat. So food sovereignty. So I'm not sure if we're sharing the slides with anybody, but I'm more than happy. Like, I have that definition of food sovereignty. It's just a paragraph that I use pretty regularly because it kind of covers everything. And again, it goes back to control. Like, who has the power? Who's controlling the food?
Yeah.
So we have another question. Can you briefly explain monoculture? Is there land use and land grabbing a contributor to the pandemic? Less animal habitat, increased animal to human populations?
Well, I mean, the pandemic has been really, really interesting. It's been really interesting to hear all of the different theories about it. But yes, there is less diversity, and less diversity means we're out of balance. There's the fact that insects are going extinct, because I was thinking, well, if we can't have cattle, like if that industry is going down, we could have protein through insects, it would be good. insects are going extinct too. So, you know, it is a problem
Your dad's on his way home, I'd like.
to, like, habitat loss, like I was saying about the Amazon, it's basically being razed. Like, they're burning it down. And you've seen the pictures. And even so, climate change, like, we haven't really talked about climate change that much, but the impacts of climate change on different things. So the impacts of climate change on viruses, on habitat, on, you know, species and different things. So yes, absolutely. There is connections between the impact we have on the earth and different things like different viruses and species that are remaining. I mean, species are going extinct. And so it is a problem. I mean, you know, there is like the zoonotics, which is like the animal to human transmission or something. There's like, it's a huge science and a lot of people are talking about it. So it's really interesting, but habitat loss and extinction is a problem. Getting climate change under control is imperative, and moving to a just transition to a fossil fuel free economy has never been more important than it is now. We don't need to just get off oil and gas right now 100%. We need to transition from fossil fuels. We need to waste, again, a lot of the energy we use is wasted. We need to waste less. We need energy efficiency, you know, and we need to transition off. I'm not saying that we don't need oil and gas for essential things. Absolutely. But we do not need gas guzzling vehicles, for example. We need electric car technology, which is happening. We need public transportation. We need food that's low input. A lot of oil, like 15 calories to 1 calorie of food. It's not all going to be organic, but it can be low input. Lower the inputs, like that just transition. Like, that's what we need. We need it now, rapidly. And you know, there really is no political will. That's the problem. Like, again, somebody was saying, like, we need to do something, we need to do it now. Yeah, we do. It is not good enough to just complain about it. But I'm hoping, like, I'm really hoping, you know, I hope on the other side of the pandemic we really realize what's important. And there are solutions. The solutions are embarrassingly simple.
Wow. Thank you. I am so much more informed. Thank you so much for sharing. Any other thoughts or questions from those of you participating and being present here?
I think Miranda had a question.
Who?
Miranda.
She kind of addressed one of them. She kind of had two questions. Denise, can you just describe what a monoculture, or explain
Right, of course. Yes, so a monoculture would be, like, say, for example, one of the things about land grabbing is that where there would be like a forest or an ecosystem, they would chop it down and grow palm. So palm is a huge issue, palm oil. And if you look at if you read the labels, you'll see palm oil, which is not, it's not healthy for us, but they grow really fast and you can make huge profits. It's an input that you can, you know, it's got a high return on investment. So palm monocultures are a problem. Another thing, if you've ever seen like rainforest certified coffee is a thing. So coffee grows better when it is under a canopy. So a lot of coffee companies, again, just take whatever's there. They just remove, they call it the overburden. They remove it and then they plant coffee trees and then they produce as much coffee as they can as quickly as they can. And so that would be an idea. Whereas Rainforest Alliance certified coffee, it might have bananas and coffee and, you know, a myriad of other things. So you have animals that it would be in there, so you'd get manure. So then you'd have fertilizer for the crop. You'd have water retention because you'd have shade. You know, so it's just like it's an ecosystem as opposed to a monoculture. So that's the difference. So, and of course, what it is, so like, for example, a lot of organic producers will do intercropping. So they might do like mung beans and lentils, like, for example. So they would plant 2 crops in one. So one might be nitrogen fixing and one might be, they might attract pollinators or whatever it is. So then, but then they have to figure out how do you harvest 2 crops? So they're ingenious. They have what, maybe one's bigger and one's smaller. So then they separate them through a separator, so that they can harvest the 2 crops, or maybe one crop is planted later than the other, and then they can harvest the first crop, then harvest the second, or whatever it is. Like, and like, my whole thing is like, we can go to Mars. Like, we have been to Mars. If we can go to Mars, I'm pretty sure we could figure out how to separate seeds. Like, I don't think it's a problem. So there's things like that. But the thing is, that takes time, takes innovation, takes effort, takes research, takes all of these things. Where if your motive is profit, all you want to do is you want to plant GMO canola, and you want to get rid of all of the trees, and you want to just like get in your giant tractor and you just want to go straight ahead and continue on, and then you're done in a hurry. So that you're maximizing your profit, you're maximizing your time and all those things. Like, it really comes down to, like, if like one thing we didn't talk about at all was like big data. Well, like when they were talking about like farm machinery and how it's part of this big system, there is big data is real. Like, there is like keeping track of soil moisture and yields and all of these things. It's super high tech data collection through this control. So if you say you have to purchase your GMO seeds from somebody, so you have the seeds, you have the chemicals, you have the machinery, it's all connected, and all this data is collected so that people know exactly who planted what where and what the yield was, and all of the things. Like, big data is a really interesting piece of this. And so the monoculture makes that easy. Like, if I have like a diverse ecosystem, it's harder to control. It's harder to understand in a way. But it is like, monocultures are really, even now they're saying at least put in a row for bees. Like, at least do that. Like, you know, change it up a little bit. But it's, again, it's the profit, and it's just huge profits. It's not even like, it's like they're still going to make a bunch of money. Like, let's not pretend that people aren't going to make a bunch of money. But like, how much money do you need? Like, how rich do you actually have to be is the more of the question. Like, the concentration of wealth, it's like 5 men own the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50%. Like, that doesn't happen by accident. Wealth, during the pandemic, billionaires have gotten even richer. Like, you know, it's the concentration of power and wealth. The food system is one place, but it's in all sectors. So yes, we really need to be aware of like redistribution of wealth and land and that sort of thing, because it's happening. And like, another thing I would say is there's something called the TRIPS, which is the trade related intellectual property. It's like a trade agreement. So it's like, people don't need to reveal anything. It's like, nope, it's intellectual property. I don't have to tell you. So you don't know how much land they own. You don't know what seeds they use. You don't know what's in their chemicals, you know? So there's this like the Philip Howard was saying was opaque. It's like, you don't really know, and they don't have to tell you. And that's where they have enabled the legislation to change to support their behavior. So it's like, it's really complex, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't like try and change it. No.
Denise, thank you so much for the presentation. I was wondering if you can share, you mentioned about Vandana Shiva and how India has so much success in terms of securing their seats, as well as putting legislation in their country not to be able to. Vandana Shiva had talked a lot about Monsanto, as you mentioned, But if you can share with us like the success that India has due to the work of Vandana Shiva, that will give us an insight to looking into the solution for Canada and the world.
Sure. I mean, India's really, really interesting because the Green Revolution happened, which was basically the introduction of like corporate food into the world. The Green Revolution, which was like chemicals and all the inputs. And so that happened actually in the Punjab, which this is a really, I was just listening to some Vandana Shiva like over the last couple of days. And like, interestingly, the Punjab was like the most fertile and productive place. They were doing great. But a lot of times when you are having a lot of success, that is when you get corporations will take an interest, right? So the Green Revolution happened there. And now, you know, there's war, there's a lot of suicides, there is the rivers are polluted, there's a lot of drug addiction. Again, people leaving the land, people losing the land, people not having control. Like, you know, the Punjab is a really interesting place. So and then sort of like couched in terms of religion, it's a religious thing. It's like, no, it's not, it's economic. Normally, mostly everything's just economic, you know, but it's couched in those terms of being religious or something else. And so that is totally not like being positive at all about India, but you know, they have fought off a lot of corporate interests. Like there's companies that are extracting water for pop, for example. So they're extracting all the water. So anybody downstream doesn't have access to water now. If they do have water, it's very polluted. So they fought that, you know, there's protecting trees, stopping dams, protecting seeds. Like, I mean, and it is really grassroots movements of people that won't, and it's dangerous. Like, let's not pretend. Like, it is very dangerous to stand up to these people, like to stand up for what's right. But, you know, it's just a matter of like, what do you have to lose? And the other interesting thing is that it's a lot of women leading these movements. Women, you cannot underestimate the power of women. All over the world, you look at where there's been social change, it was women that were leading it. Men usually get the credit, but it was women. The women are just like, nope, forget it. This is wrong. We are not standing for this. Their friends and family are dying. Their kids are suffering. You know, women will not stand for that. So there's a lot of sort of organizing and activism around, because people really have nothing to lose. And I kind of feel that way right now. Like, there's a lot of people that are suffering right now. It's like, they don't really have a lot to lose. So when you get into a situation like that, you know, then you, I mean, I live a nice, comfortable life. I mean, you know, unfortunately I have white privilege and, you know, so I might not be as likely to do that work, but where you have people that are suffering, you know, they fight back. And plus, like, Vandana Shiva is great because she really works. She's a physicist, and, you know, she works at you almost have to work at the like legal level, or the court level. And that ETC group I was talking about, they do a lot of that too. They fought nanotechnology, Terminator seeds. So seeds that you can't grow again. So there is like people that are doing the work at that international level, where like the TRIPS and the World Trade Organization and like all of those levels up there are organizations working at that level. And it's important. Like, we need to work at every level, you know, in our kitchens, in our backyards, and at the international level. So there's a lot of people doing that work, but you cannot underestimate, like, for example, a trade like a G7 meeting. There is really no civil society invited into those meetings. There's corporations, though. There's bankers and business people and companies, like, they're in the meetings. They're like, well, we want this and we want that. Is civil society in there? Not really. You know, it's not fair. Not everybody's voices are being heard, but really it comes down to money. It's like, who has enough money to influence whoever to get whatever it is that they want. So it's like that power and money combo. And often it's people from companies that are in government. Like, you know, there's a lot of people who are on boards of directors or running companies or banks or whatever that are now in government. So of course, whose interests do they have in mind? So like, there's that going on too. So, you know, it's not easy. Like it's a huge battle for sure, but there are a lot of people working against it. I love Vandana Shiva so much. She like changed my life. Like I just reading her stuff, she's so easy to understand. And she gets right to the heart of it, which is like human rights, rights of nature. Like, you know, this is the basis of these things. This isn't because I want it. It's because it's the right thing to do. So, yeah, Vandana Shiva. And that there's a lot of places, like I was saying, La Via Campesina and different peasant movements. And there's a lot of really beautiful things going on in the world. So, you know, and that it's people power. Like that's the only way it's going to change is by learning and then talking to your friends and seeing what it is you can do, you know, especially like, you know, a good time would be like support your farmer and support like farmers markets and that kind of thing. Like it's a start at least.
Wow. There, on the comments, there
Denise,
is.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Denise, just wanted to make a comment that monoculture too affects the people's health because they are not growing what they need and what they used to eat. Their diet has changed, and that causes lots of health problems because where I come from Chile, we are the producers of potatoes, and we don't have potatoes over there. We have to buy them, and people are not supposed to grow the potatoes. Now the corn that is grown there, it's all just modified. That's what we call modify over there. And people are getting sick and nobody is being responsible for this, that they're producing for the owner of the land, the one who owns the crops, and people don't get to eat what they really need and what their DNA needs to have a healthy life. So that's another consequence that the people in the world are paying. So.
Well, that's really interesting. And I was thinking about putting this in my presentation, but I was like, oh, you know, I might be getting too, like, just too much. But in the 70s, oil was really expensive, okay? And so everyone was like buying oil. There's all this money. All these oil producing countries are like, wow, like we've got so much money. They're like, what should we do with all of our money? So they lent it to the global south, for the most part, countries in the global south. So then the people in the global south are like, great, you know, they're suffering the impacts of colonization and different things. They're like, sure, yeah, we need foreign investment. So they took the money. And then the WTO, so it was the World Bank and the World Trade Organization, they got together and they're like, actually, we want you to pay that money back. And so there was a few things that they were made to do. So one, they couldn't grow what they needed to grow for themselves. They had to grow food for export. So now they're growing chocolate and flowers for me, and they're not growing the food that they need to eat for themselves. So now they can't, so now they have to buy the food. So now they have to sell, not only that, they have to grow that food, and then they sell the food, and the money they get goes to the global north. So now they don't have the food or the money. So they did that. They stopped them. What they instituted, they're called structural adjustment programs. Structural adjustment programs is like the most important economic concept in the world, in history, that people have no idea what it is. So you can't spend money on any kind of government spending has to stop. So you can't spend money on transportation, on infrastructure, on housing, on health, on anything. You have to give all of your money to the person that gave the debt.
Your debt.
To pay your debt. You can't have any kind of You have to nationalize, you have to sell off all of your industries. So you used to have your power company and your water company. I'm like, nope, you got to sell it off. You have oil reserves or anything? No, now people in the global north own that and they can take all the profits. Like, and they have been the outflow of money from the global south to the global north over the decades they have repaid their debt many, many, many times over. Like, it's just like even paying the interest on whatever amount of money that they got, you know? And so this debt, like, actually China supposedly has like said that people don't have to pay their debt right now. There has been a lot of talk of debt amnesty so that people don't have to pay these debts because they've been paid and paid and paid and paid and paid over. It is basically just theft, you know? So you're taking all of the resources, you're taking the labor, because a lot of workers don't even get paid. Like, they're low wage workers, or they don't, they're not even getting paid at all. So and then you're dumping the garbage there. So there's a lot of climate change, a lot of pollution, a lot of problems that are happening in the global south. And in the meantime, there's just this net outflow of money coming from the global south. And then people are like, why are people coming? Why are they migrating? Well, because their economies have been crushed for this debt repayment and to service the global north, because we need our chocolate and we need our flowers and we need our, you know, whatever it is that we need, our coffee. I mean, imagine it.
Yeah.
So like the structural adjustment programs, and starting in the 70s, that really changed everything. Colonization started it, but it just became imperialism, and then economic imperialism, and here we are. Like, it's the same but even worse.
Thank you.
Wow. You know, you feel your blood rising to do a revolution. Like, this is absolutely amazing. In the comments, we have a book recommendation. It's called Women Who Dig by Trina Morlace. And she's gone to farms all over the world and shows how women are at the grassroots of these movements and making changes. So I just wanted to share that as something that was on the comment box. Well, so our time is coming to an end. It's 2:26. And maybe we have one more question if you would like, and then we can wrap up. Go ahead, Berta.
I don't have a question.
Okay. Well, I know it's a lot, but it's systemic. Like, it's all connected. And so the things that you see around you, like, don't be fooled into thinking that it's something that it isn't, because really it's about greed and about profit. And that is the main source of all the things. So, you know, it's this divide and conquer, and the racism and the sexism and all the oppression. The oppression is just about getting richer. So, you know, we need to band together as humans and work together, instead of being fooled into thinking we're not the same and that we're not in it together, because we are. And so, you know, we need to relearn and unlearn what we know about a lot of different things. I mean, like I said, don't underestimate the propaganda and that, you know, the control of the media and the control of information and the control of the internet and the control of social media. And, like, you know, we are getting a lot of information in those ways. And so it's not our fault that we don't know. You know, we are being, the information is being funneled to us in a certain way so that we believe certain things. So, like, but we just need to unlearn. And there's so many academics and writers and, you know, filmmakers, and they're doing the work. And so, you know, just learning and talk and just illuminating it, you know, showing it for what it really is, and being very critical. Do not believe it. You know, you need to really be critical of what you're seeing and hearing. And just like, we are in it together. and we do have power. There's a lot of us, like we have power, and we should like capitalize on that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Thank you. Oh my, thank you so much, Denise. You are amazing, and this has been so informative and so energizing. Thank you so much. We appreciate the work that you put into this presentation. And I'll take this opportunity to thank SCIC for sharing you with us and your expertise and supporting you in this work. We also want to thank the West Hub, the John Humphrey Center. There's Nixie and her creative work with the posters. There's Renee and all the support that she's given us, and Angelica to make this possible. So thank you as well as the Regina Circle for supporting this work and moving with the ideas. And this is not just a one-man show. We all banded together, and this has been so important, valuable, knowledge-ridden. I mean, it's really making us rethink how we live and how we move. So thank you so much. And also special thanks to the Catherine Donnelly Foundation, because without them, this is our funding. And we want to say thank you so much for everyone who came. It's going to go up as a YouTube video, Renee. I think that's the way that we do it. So at the end of this, she'll, wrap it up and present it on YouTube. So it'll be there to share. And if you want the links, we can send that to you as well. So thanks so much. Good job, Denise. Amazing.
Thank you. That was really fun.
So much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if Right Relations can hang tight, just for us to debrief a little bit, I appreciate it. But everybody else, thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Are we going to announce the next?
Oh, I forgot that part. The next week, Denise is doing a follow-up on session 3 of Right Relations with Food. And Denise, what are you going to be talking about?
I'm going to be looking at food resilience. So again, almost like the solutions, like what can we do to support resilience in ecosystems and food systems? And then also looking at climate change, because climate change is obviously it has a huge impact on food production. So we'll be looking at those aspects of food.
Awesome. You're very knowledgeable. Thank you. And thanks everybody else for being part of this. We really appreciate it and your input. Thank you.
Thank you.